Hey guys, it's your boy.
Nice.
Back at it again for what I would like to call an inevitable video today. We're going to be looking at HCI, human-computer interaction, and thus everyone's favourite, Big Ben Schneiderman. So what better way to start this video than by introducing the 8 golden rules for interface design, written by the boy, Ben Schneiderman himself. The core concepts for the rules for interface design are pretty much a video within themselves, so I won't go into them with too much depth here, but just understand that more research into it will produce a better end result. The idea of these rules are to appeal to pretty much every kind of user, so the strive for consistency obviously appeals to everyone equally. However, things like informative feedback might help a more novice user feel less stressed out when it comes down to achieving a goal. Same thing with the ability to go back. However, having shortcuts for more powerful users will benefit them more. It covers every base, more or less, and like I say, more research into it would benefit you. So with all of that in mind, I think it's time to have a look at the different interface styles that you can pick. As we go through each of these, we're going to discuss the strengths and weaknesses of each and who's going to benefit from it more. So at the very highest end of powerful users, we're going to be wanting to use command line services. These are very fast, very powerful, but the negative is they're very difficult to learn and you can't see the results coming back from them. These are things that only really experienced people want to use. Perhaps a user interface might benefit others, such as using a form fill-in. So form fill-in is something which everyone can use to an extent. It's not very fast and powerful, but it provides context to every action that you're doing. So for example, if you want to fill in a username on a website, you're going to be filling in a form that says username, so you know exactly what you're doing. The negative of this is that it does assume that people have got a typing skill, and also it's not as efficient as command line. So very similar to form fill-in is the option of having menus, and quite often you'll find that menus have got form fill-in as a feature. The only difference is that it's not quite as strict with having to type things out. You may have combo boxes or radio buttons. Same sort of thing, user has an interface so they can see what they're doing, however it's not quite as flexible as a overall form fill-in, and also, needless to say, not as efficient as command line. So a great feature to have in any user interface is this idea of direct manipulation. It allows you to get feedback for what you're doing instantly, so you can reverse it or keep going with it based off of what you see. What you see is what you get, is the concept here. Obviously the negatives of this is it's slightly more difficult to design, and also it's quite hard to make a really recognisable icon for each action that you're trying to do. Examples of direct manipulation would be a video game, where you put in some input and you get feedback and you know exactly what's happening. So the most user-friendly interface that you can have is probably natural language. The idea of this is of course that you talk into something and it gives you feedback, or if you type something it gives you feedback without restricting what you can say. Very powerful indeed, however it's quite hard to design by comparison to the other methods that we've mentioned. An example of this would be, hey Alexa, what's up?
Shut up, Sim.
So after this, it's an idea now to look at the different types of control that we can have. So I'm not going to go too in depth into this one because once again, an entire video for itself, and quite frankly it's not very interesting, but a nice little diagram coming up here. So we're only going to be looking at the screen-based controls, not so much audio controls. So as you can see, there's quite a wide variety of different things that you can use. However, it can be categorized in 2 main ways. You've got closed-ended controls and open-ended controls, I suppose. You've got checkbox or radio button or spin list, which has only got a set number of variables that you can select from. However, if you take something like
entry field
or a notebook, it has an unlimited number of things the user can input. So the benefits of this is it allows the user to put something in which is closer to what they actually mean, because they don't have a limited number of options. However, it's a little bit harder to handle the errors as opposed to closed options. So something we haven't actually spoken about yet is why we use HCI when we're making applications and programs. Having a good user interface that's easy to use is likely to make more users use our product. I know it sounds very self-explanatory, but it needs to be mentioned. There are obvious negatives to not having a good user interface. It's much less likely for people to actually use your program or application if the interface is poor. If there are errors with it, people won't be able to achieve their goals. Less money overall, and it would be a waste of time within itself. So incorporating what we were talking about earlier on in the video is quite important here. When we're designing a user interface, we need to actually think about what the end user is going to want. Is it going to be an expert user, say, for example, a programmer? When you're making an IDE for them, they don't need a lot of fluff, they just need something which is basic, and it just allows them to write the code that they need to. Or are you designing something for, say, old people in a home? Yeah, it's going to need to be a little bit more straightforward than that for them. It's not just the user's expertise that we need to think about, however. It's also the context of which they're going to be using our applications. If you're in a life-critical situation, say in a hospital, the program that you write is probably going to need to be more efficient than it is nice to use. This is typical within a lot of sort of business environments. You may have someone who's not necessarily expert with the programs they're going to be using, but they're going to have to learn because of the necessity of the business. So the next thing to look at is usability principles, or heuristics. You could also call it accessibility. The key concepts here are very, very similar to what we went with the original 8 golden rules for user interface design by Ben Schneiderman. There are a couple of different things you need to add on as well, so accessibility is very important too. Things like having a good contrasting colour scheme allows people with visual impairments to be able to use the application that you've made. Also, constant updates as to how you're doing, error handling, things like that. Things you probably already know are very important to have as an aspect of your programs. I don't think that I can overstate the importance of the things that are represented in this figure here. Read through it, ensure that you've got it down, because accessibility is such a huge thing in this day and age, both for legality and for actual usability reasons, so just take it in as much as you can. Okay, so that'll be me for today. I'll see you again tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed. Not quite as memey, this video is a little bit more to the point, but it's hard-hitting, heavy subject. So thank you very much for watching, and see you again.